Hey there and welcome back to NBA 2K18's My League mode. My name is Pete and today we complete an important episode in our My League expansion series, because after your feedback in the last episode, today we are going to sign some contract extensions. And we will start things off with Brice Johnson. I think going forward, Johnson has a very nice role on the team as the 6th or 7th man off the bench. He perfectly fills that role of a bruiser and post scorer, a guy who does not shy away from battling for the ball down low, and he is one of the few offensive inside presences that we have, and therefore the extension more than makes sense for the Legionnaires. And the offer on the table is a flat $9.5 million for the next 3 seasons, however with a team option for year number 4 included. This is, by the way, the same amount of money that Josh Richardson makes. However, the way he is performing at the moment, his contract has turned out to be a true steal. No surprises here, Brice Johnson accepts our offer, and that means the 25-year-old power forward extends his contract with the Legionnaires for at least 3 seasons, maybe even 4. Now up next we have Tyler Ulis, and I have to say I was a bit surprised to see the majority of you in favor of re-signing him. I know that ideally our starting point guard could be a bit higher rated. On the other hand though, we don't really have that many other options at the moment, and so Ulis might actually be the best available player at the moment in regards to his combination of skill and age. Now George Hill, yes George, not Grant, I made that mistake in the last episode. He was a tempting target to go after in free agency, but ultimately I decided against it. He's not that much better compared to Ulis. He is already 33 years old and therefore probably on the decline, not to mention that he's also a bit more of a scorer than a playmaker, and looking at our team, especially our wing players, we already have enough of those. Now, that doesn't have to mean that we are locked in with Ulis for the next few years. If someone better becomes available, maybe in the draft or in the next offseason, then I'm always open for a change and an upgrade. For now, Ulis gets a very similar offer here to Johnson's, $9.4 million for the next 3 seasons with a team option for year number 4. This now secures his services as a long-term option at the starting point guard, but the contract isn't too heavy and should allow us to trade him if we need to. And who knows, maybe committing to Ulis early in his career will pay off down the line. Looking at the cap space situation for the offseason, we now have about $28 million available. However, if we include the team option for Mohamed Bamba, that is closer to 23. Speaking of team options, for both Ulis and Johnson, the team options in the last year of their contracts are not displayed here at the moment. Maybe they will be once the extensions actually kick in. This is something we should keep an eye on. Now, with those 2 extensions out of the way, I think it's time for some action, and we start things off at home in Louisville with a game against the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, the Pelicans roster this year is not really great to begin with, and they also have 2 longer-term injuries here to make matters worse, and while the absence of Frank Jackson probably doesn't hurt them too much, franchise superstar Anthony Davis will very likely be missed a whole lot more. And without Davis in the lineup, the Pelicans also end up losing this one. The game was actually somewhat close in the 4th quarter, but 10 quick points from Richardson then put the nail in the coffin, and so we start this episode off with a victory, 110-97. Richardson also ended up being the team's top scorer with 20 points. He shot 6 of 10 from the field and 8 of 9 from the free throw line. Andre Flanders, then the second of 8 guys in total who scored in double figures tonight. He finished the game with 19 points in 25 minutes. Fresh off his contract extension, Ulis then wasn't overly efficient on his way to 13 points. Brice Johnson definitely convinced a bit more tonight, shooting 5 of 9 for 12 points and 5 rebounds. Rodney Hood then had a pretty efficient 10 points. Labissiere recorded a double-double with 10 points and 15 rebounds. Mohamed Bamba then once again with a 4x5, finishing the game with 10 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals and 5 blocks. Deontay Davis then player number 8 with a double-digit scoring performance. He shot a perfect 4-4 from the field and 2 of 2 from the free throw line, and ended up barely missing a double-double with 10 points and 9 rebounds. So a great team effort on our side, and we did actually play against the former Legionnaire player in this game, and that would be small forward Mo Harkless. The Mo Harkless trade was instrumental in getting the draft pick that eventually ended up being Andre Flanders. For the Pelicans tonight, however, he wasn't all that impressive. He would foul out after 23 minutes of action, finishing the game with 13 points. I also quickly want to mention rookie Josh Mitchell here. New Orleans drafted him with the pick they received from us in the pick swap, and Mitchell has already established himself as the Pelicans' starting center. Tonight he had a pretty poor shooting performance with 6 of 19 from the field, but so far this season he has shown flashes of becoming a dominant big man, and his 13-point, 15-rebound double-double tonight shows that as well. So let's keep an eye on him. He might just become a force to be reckoned with in a few years. Our next game then against the Chicago Bulls, and this time on the road, and all things considered this was a pretty lopsided affair. Scalabrine fouled himself out after only 17 minutes, and while we did manage to get DeMarcus Cousins into foul trouble and then off the floor as well, all of that happened a bit too late to have an effect, and so in the end, while we were the better shooting team, we still lost the game by 13 points. One of the main reasons here probably the Bulls' 18 offensive rebounds, but we also committed 15 turnovers compared to their 9. This time only 4 of our players scored in double figures, but we had 2 pretty impressive stat lines. The first one from Josh Richardson, who scored 29 points, shooting a very efficient 10 of 15 from the field. Efficiency-wise, however, Brice Johnson took the crown in this game. Up until late in the fourth quarter, he hadn't missed a single shot. He eventually did miss a single one, but finished the game shooting 11 of 12, scoring 24 points to go along with his 5 rebounds. Both Mohamed Bamba and Andre Flanders added 11 points each. Our road trip continues. From Chicago we now travel over to Milwaukee, where we face the Bucks for the last game of January. And this one once again went in our favor. The Legionnaires had a good shooting night, and despite the size of the Bucks, they were also dominant on the glass. They also made 15 three-pointers, and simply put, they were the overall better team. And this then led to a deserved and decisive 26-point victory. And for the third straight time in this episode, we find Richardson at the top of the scoring list. Tonight he exploded for 31 points, including 7 three-pointers, and he also added 5 rebounds and 5 assists in what was undoubtedly the performance of the night. Tyler Ulis then remained perfect from the field and only missed a single free throw to finish the game with 22 points, and he also barely missed out on a double-double with 9 assists. Andre Flanders then, as usual, a bit less impressive on the efficiency side, but still good enough to put up 20 points and 5 rebounds. Mohamed Bamba then almost became the 4th player to score 20 or more points tonight. However, he finished just shy of that mark with 19, but just like Tyler Ulis, he shot a perfect 100% from the field, and he also added 12 rebounds to complete the double-double. So this now concludes the month of January, and the Legionnaires' standing in the league remains unchanged. They still occupy the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference. Both the Cavaliers and the 76ers have built themselves a nice cushion, and I don't think the Legionnaires will be able to reach up to them. At the same time, the Legionnaires also have a small lead ahead of teams like Brooklyn, Chicago and Washington. We will have a quick look at our players' stats at the end of the video. For the moment, we have another trade to look at. 2 expiring players are looking to switch teams here. The Mavericks look to unload power forward Dwight Powell, while the Raptors would get rid of CJ Miles and a 2nd-round draft pick. With this move, the Mavericks get rid of an expiring player they probably wouldn't re-sign anyway. Sophomore Austin Wiley is ready to take up his minutes, while Adrian Payne is also on the contract for the next season. Acquiring a small forward in CJ Miles would help the Mavericks, at least for the season, because starter Harrison Barnes is currently suffering from a long-term spinal injury, and at this point it seems likely that he could miss the rest of the season. Brown and Pondexter's backups are not spectacular, and so CJ Miles could find himself starting in Dallas, at least until Barnes is ready to go again. A few more months as the starter could definitely increase the market value of the 32-year-old small forward, while at the same time it would allow Toronto to give heavier minutes to OG Anunoby. The biggest upside in this trade for Toronto, however, would be the addition of Dwight Powell, because Toronto's power forward position is looking extremely lackluster, with 3 players with ratings in their mid-60s. That is also why I have no problem with Toronto adding a 2nd-rounder to the deal. They need Powell more than the Mavericks need Miles, and Powell is also 4 years younger than Miles and therefore probably a bit more valuable. All in all though, the trade makes a lot of sense for both sides, and so of course it gets approved. And with that we head into the month of February 2020, where we start things off back at home with a game against the Miami Heat. And the Heat are a very interesting team this year. Their entire starting lineup consists of players with ratings above 80, including sophomore Marvin Bagley, who's already averaging 17 points and 7 rebounds per game at only 21 years young. Still, the Heat currently have the worst record in the entire league, which is especially surprising as they play in a rather weak Eastern Conference. And their poor standing in the league would also not change in this game. We had a few close minutes in the 4th quarter, but then Rodney Hood came up big and scored 10 straight points to put the game away. The end result, a 9-point victory in game number 50 of the season. However, the victory came with a heavy price tag. I'll get into that in a moment. Let's have a quick look at the stats first. Our scoring leader tonight was a surprisingly efficient Andre Flanders, who shot 50% from the field to finish with a team-high 23 points. Both Richardson and Hood had 20 points each, both also had 5 rebounds, and Hood also managed to add 5 assists. All of that is nice to see, however the shocker came after the game. Mohamed Bamba injured himself only a few minutes into this game, and he was ultimately diagnosed with a right knee tendinitis, putting him out of action for 4 to 6 weeks. This right here could now prove to be a big blow to the Legionnaires' success lately. The team definitely had its ups and downs this season, but the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference is an immense accomplishment for this young team, and Mohamed Bamba definitely had a big part to play in that. Now, I also have to acknowledge that we didn't really have any injuries so far this season, so of course it had to happen eventually, but I was hoping for something a bit less serious, and of course maybe also not on one of our most important players. Now, we have to look forward, and that means we have to make adjustments to our rotation, and those will be pretty straightforward. Replacing Mohamed Bamba in the starting lineup is Deontay Davis, who will hopefully bring a similar effort on defense, although of course he doesn't quite have the length and mobility of Bamba. Next to Davis, Labissière and Brice Johnson are also seeing increased minutes, and Labissière with 35 now has the highest workload on the team. However, I think all of that is still pretty manageable, and so I think at least for the next few games we should be fine with a 3-man rotation. If we wanted to, we could give Juan Hernangomez some minutes off the bench, and I have also somewhat successfully played 6'8" Mitch Dennis as a stretch 4. It is definitely not his ideal position, but for a few minutes here and there it works well enough. And while we're at it, I think we can also quickly switch Labissière's position over to power forward. That is the position he has played for us for a while now, and the switch also gives him a slight rating increase. We head out to Brooklyn next, and the Nets are our immediate pursuer in the Eastern Conference, so this could indeed turn out to be a close game. And in the end it was a good hard-fought battle. However, from our perspective, unfortunately with the wrong team standing tall in the end, the Nets take the game at home and win by 9, 121 to 112. It was a great game for Deontay Davis though. He immediately filled the role of Bamba nicely, and he finished the game with an impressive double-double with 24 points, 12 rebounds and 3 blocks. Once again, we had a total of 8 players in double figures tonight, one of them Josh Richardson, who finished with 20 points, however unfortunately fouling out after only 26 minutes of action. Tyler Ulis would also take himself out of the game with 6 fouls, but that would happen in the final seconds of the game and not before he had recorded a double-double. Ulis finished with 14 points and 11 assists, shooting a very efficient 7 of 9 from the field. Mitch Dennis had 13 points off the bench, Brice Johnson added 11 points, 6 rebounds and 5 blocks, while Rodney Hood, Labissière and Andre Flanders all scored 10 points each, and Andre Flanders made up for his horrific shooting performance by grabbing 10 rebounds and dishing out 5 assists. The road trip continues and the next stop is Indiana, and the Pacers immediately handed us another loss. Mohamed Bamba was already injured and out of the game to begin with, and additionally both Deontay Davis and Labissière managed to fall out of this one, so in the end we had to run with a pretty decimated big man rotation, and that led to easy points in the paint for Indiana, and ultimately resulted in a lopsided 27-point victory for the Pacers. Offensively, we also weren't all that great. None of our players was able to score 20 or more points tonight. The scoring leader would once again be Josh Richardson, his 19 points though not enough to secure the victory here. Brice Johnson had 14 points, only missing 1 shot from the field and also adding 3 steals and 3 blocks, and despite fouling out, Labissière got himself the double-double with 11 points and 10 rebounds, while Mitch Dennis sank 2 3-pointers and went to the free throw line 5 times, which resulted in him scoring 10 points in the loss here. Last game of the week now against the Detroit Pistons, and the Legionnaires are definitely not looking to start a losing streak here, so the return back home a welcome change, and the Legionnaires did in fact manage to secure the victory in this one. The team had a fantastic shooting performance, making 50% of their 3-pointers and shooting almost 60% from the field, and so they scored a whopping 120 points to win the game by 17. And once again, a ton of double-digit scoring performances here tonight. Richardson and Labissière tied for the team highs with 21 points each, but I would give the nod for the better performance to Labissière tonight, who also managed to grab 10 rebounds for another double-double. Brice Johnson and Andre Flanders added a combined 33 points off the bench. Flanders did most of his work from the free throw line, where he made 9 of his 10 attempts, but the two of them are always good enough to put the pressure on the opponent's secondary units. Our 2 small forwards, Rodney Hood and Mitch Dennis, both hit 3 3-pointers tonight, and both of them finished with 13 points. Tyler Ulis had another textbook double-double in this one, 10 points and 10 assists. He is very slowly growing into a great playmaker for the Legionnaires. Deontay Davis then the first of 8 guys here who did not score in double digits, but he did grab a team-high 14 rebounds, and believe it or not, despite having absolutely no outside shot, he also sank his first 3-pointer of the season. So here we are with only 5 days to go until the trade deadline, and 1.5 weeks away from the All-Star break. And with the trade deadline coming up, I would like to quickly talk about Rodney Hood. Because lately, Rodney Hood has definitely been a subject for discussion in the comments. Many of you would like to see me trade him, others are against it, and so I thought I would quickly add my perspective. Now, rating-wise, Rodney Hood is currently the best player on the team. However, it also has to be said that he doesn't really stand out. His performances are sometimes good, sometimes bad, and sometimes just right, and all in all, probably not quite worth the $19 million we pay him per year. At the same time, I would definitely also not go as far and say Rodney Hood is easily replaced. At the moment, after trading Kyle Kuzma, we really only have 3 serviceable players at the wing. That would be Richardson, Flanders and Hood himself, while Mitch Dennis is slowly but steadily growing into a serviceable player off the bench, but apart from being a deadly shooter, he doesn't really bring all that much to the table. I imagine that will change going forward, but for the moment we are nowhere near plugging Dennis into a more prominent role, let alone give him the starting job. And that pretty much already concludes the situation. Simply put, Rodney Hood is our best option at the small forward, and while Andre Flanders remains horribly inefficient at stretches and Mitch Dennis also a rather one-dimensional player, Rodney Hood will remain in the starting lineup in Louisville. Could we find a cheaper option to replace him? Yes, probably. Would that really change anything about the team's situation in the Eastern Conference? Well, I highly doubt it. With Hood as the starter, we have safely secured the 3rd seed in the East, and as long as we have cap space to spare, I don't think we need to make a move here just because Hood might earn a bit more than he deserves. So unless one of you brings up an argument that completely changes my mind, Hood will remain with the Legionnaires past the trade deadline. However, I am still looking for trade partners regarding Juan Hernangomez. Maybe we can move him to a team with a need for some outside shooting, and maybe we can get a low-value draft pick in return. Of course, as always, let me know what you think. Should we make any other moves? Should we maybe already try and see what we can get for our 1st round pick? Or should we remain quiet and watch the rest of the league do their deals? Now, as promised, to wrap things up, I will also quickly give you an overview of the players' stats at the moment. 53 games into the season, these are the numbers. And as usual, I will remain quiet for this one. You can pause and have a closer look if you want to, and I'll be back in a brief moment. Alright, so here we are, trade deadline coming up, and this is where we make the cut. Next time we will very likely see a few moves being made, maybe involving us, maybe only the CPU, and if we have time at the end of the episode, we will also begin the All-Star festivities. Until then, leave a thumbs up if you liked this episode, and of course, if you want to support the channel and haven't subscribed already, then go ahead and feel free to do so. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!